Hi, my name is Kate McMahon, and thanks so much for joining us today for the gallery. Very excited to talk today with Leslie, and she's going to share with us her watercolors that she's got in our gallery at the Media Center right now. Welcome, Leslie.
Thank you.
Leslie Altman from Yarmouthport.
That's right.
On and off for 50 years.
Right, full-time for the last 20.
Wow, that's great. You've seen quite a few changes, not only in Yarmouthport, but across the Cape.
You bet. Less and less open space is what I see.
Yeah, me too. But we'll get to this later, but you sure are capturing some great open space that we have here on the Cape.
Thank you.
So I believe you have, you're quite involved in art on the Cape and quite a few associations. Would you like to share anything about that with our audience?
Sure. My first connection was with the Cape Cod Art Center, and that's where I started. Most of my classes have come from there. I also have taken classes at the Cotuit Center for the Art, where I'm a member, and at the Cape Cod Museum of Art, where I'm a member, and at the Chatham Creative Arts Center, where I'm also a member. So one thing about painting is it's very isolating because you do it by yourself. But if you have a group of painters with you, it feels like a community, so that's enjoyable.
Can you tell us a little bit about when you began creating art and what was the impetus for you?
It's a little ironic. As a young child, I remember it was third grade, I was probably 8, we had an art teacher that came in every month or so, and she came in and had me doing something with the other kids, and she basically didn't like what I did and basically said to me, you know what, you should give this up.
Oh my.
You don't have any talent, why don't you try music? Which people said in the days before we discovered self-esteem. So I said, okay, that's not for me, and I never took an art class in junior high, in high school, in college. I never even took the art history class in my college, which was a famous class in this particular school. So when I was retired and came here at 62, a friend of mine was taking a class with Mary Richmond, and she at that time had her own studio, and they said, why don't you take this class? I think you'd really enjoy it. And I said, nah, I can't do art. I'm terrible at art. I just don't have any talent. She said, well, keep me company. So I said, okay. And I went, and I fell in love with the process of using watercolors.
That's awesome.
That's what Mary was teaching, and so that's what I did, and I don't know how to do anything else, basically, but she said very gently, I think you could use a drawing class. So I took a drawing class, and then I took the same class again, and then I took another drawing class, and meanwhile taking watercolor classes, mostly at the Art Center in Barnstable.
Well, your story gives me great inspiration, since stick figures are a little bit difficult for me.
Well, you know, I sell every summer at the shanties in Hyannis Harbor, and I always talk to people who come in to look and say, if I can do it, you can do it. And this year, for the first time, a woman emailed me and said, I just want you to know I started taking watercolor and I love it. So,
that's
that
wonderful.
made me feel great.
Very heartwarming. Very heartwarming. With your art, are there any influences that really drive what you do, influencers?
I think my teachers have been the greatest influence, and I would cite Robert Mesrop, who teaches at the Cape Cod Art Center and also in Chatham, and Ann Hart, who teaches in Chatham primarily. They have unique styles, but they are so passionate about what they do that it inspires me. So that's those. But of course, I always owe a great debt to Mary Richmond as well.
Before we started today, we talked about watercolor, and that's your primary medium, but something else that you're getting into right now, which is alcohol ink. But before we talk about the alcohol ink, we brought in a couple of your paintings that are currently being shown here in our gallery, and I'm hoping you could just share a little bit more with the audience the background of each of these.
Sure. Bone Hill Road is based on a photograph by Robert Mesrop, actually, and painted quite a while ago. It's my favorite painting that I've done because it leads you into a place which I like to be in. I love snow. I love knowing through Robert that snow is not just white, which you can see there. that wonderful gate to nowhere is gone. The people who owned the house in the back took the gate down. So I mean, because it doesn't serve any purpose, but it was, I thought, beautiful. So there it is, and it makes me happy every time I go down that road, which is in Camaquid. There's an Audubon sanctuary at the end. Every time I go down that road, I think of this painting. And when the painting is in my house, I have learned the hard way that if I love something, I should not sell it, because then it's gone. I did sell, there's a painting of Ariel's swing back there that I sold the original to a friend, and she passed away, and so I spoke to her daughter and I said, you know that painting of the swing, if you don't want it, I'll buy it back. And she said, no, we want to keep it. And I said,
well, they loved it,
they
and
loved
they know
it,
it meant
and
something to their
I
mom.
have a good print, so I'm reasonably happy about that.
Yeah, yeah.
This one takes place in the Adirondacks. It's, again, a picture of Robert Mesrop's. The reason I brought that out is because one of the things that makes watercolor difficult, and in fact annoying, is that you don't use white paint. You leave the white, which is the paper. And you can't imagine my talking to myself with that. Leave the guy's face white. Leave the guy's face white. Don't paint the face. Don't paint the face, so that I could get the light on him.
Right.
Otherwise, it wouldn't have worked. But I was so proud of myself for managing to do that I brought this one too.
I think it's great.
It's
very serene too.
That's the other idea. You know, some people like art that is provocative or passionate. I want to paint something where you want to be. And I think I learned this just recently. My parents had a painting over their sofa when I was growing up. It was a copy, but it was a street that was heading, probably suburban street, nothing particularly spectacular. But I always wanted to go down that street. And that's what I want people who look at my paintings to feel. I want to go down Bone Hill Road. I want to go fishing. I want to see that.
Yeah, lots of color in there.
Yes, it can be very colorful, watercolor. It can also be fairly subtle. So,
well, those are both beautiful.
Thank you.
Thanks for highlighting those. And do you want to talk a little bit more about a different medium, alcohol ink?
I'd love to talk about alcohol ink. One thing about watercolor is you have to be willing to let go control to some extent. The water and the paint will react, they will flow, they will do what they want to do, and sometimes not what you wanted them to do. And I am a person who, even in my child-rearing, was ready to give up control. Yes, you may, was what I said first, and very seldom, no, you can't. So alcohol ink is even more so. It's ink suspended in an alcohol medium, and you paint on paper that is not porous, so it doesn't suck in the ink. It floats on top, briefly. And so while it's floating, you can move it around a little bit, but once it dries, then you have to put more alcohol in to get it to move. So I paint on Yupo, which is a plastic paper that doesn't absorb.
Okay.
And I've got a sample here if you want to see it.
Yes, please. We'd love to.
It's very vibrant. So this was two colors, yellow and bluish green. And I did some blowing and I did some moving around of the paint, and it looked to me like a tree with rocks. So I tried to develop that tree with rocks look. And I don't know if you can see, but the alcohol does leave a little line where it's thicker, so it's got some texture.
Yes.
And I just find it really fascinating. It doesn't always do what you want it to do, but it's not the end of the world if it doesn't.
That's great.
Yeah, and this one looked like trees and rocks, so it's trees and rocks.
It's exactly what it looks like. Now, how quickly does it have to be done if you don't want to add more of the alcohol solution?
I would say you have 3 or 4 minutes, maybe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it happens really quickly.
And so...
it's also toxic, so you have to do it in a place that's well ventilated.
Oh, okay. Okay. So in that example, did you lead with the yellow paint, or?
What I did, first you put on a layer of medium, which is basically alcohol.
Okay.
And then you drop paint in, and then you can blow on it. You can spread it with a brush. This looks to me like it was dabbed with a Q-tip. I don't remember. So I spread the ink around with the Q-tip to make that shape.
Okay.
And you blow through a straw. You can drop more alcohol. You can spray it. So there's lots of, you can spray with alcohol, and there you go. You have to, it's a little bit more abstract. You have to use your imagination when you get something. You say, what is this?
Yeah. Yeah. But it sounds like once it's done, it's pretty much done. It's completed.
I could probably erase that with alcohol if I wanted to. Some of the colors are staining, so I might have some residue left on the paper, but I'm not going to. Not that one.
Yeah.
I like it. I'm going to leave it alone.
That's awesome. So is there anything else that you would like to chat about before we move on to?
I don't think so, except I
Okay.
would encourage everybody to try using watercolor because it's such fun.
That's awesome.
And I can plug my class. I do the first Thursdays of the month. I have a group at the library in Yarmouthport that comes and plays with watercolor. So
That's
anyone's
great.
welcome. And
That's awesome.
we are at all levels of skill, and it's just a fun time.
Fun and welcoming group.
Yes, so check the Yarmouthport Library website if you want to find out about it.
That sounds great. Well, thanks so much for being here.
Well,
I had
thank
a
you.
lot of fun learning more details about these.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I'm excited for people to come and see them.
Absolutely, me too. Thank you so much for joining us today for the gallery with Leslie Altman.